In this lesson, we're going to focus on how can we get rid of fractions, but then also how can we get rid of decimals when solving to make it easier to solve for a variable. All right, remember back to your elementary days and place value. Remember the first number in front of the decimal is our ones. And then after our decimal, we have our tenths, our hundredths, and then we have our thousandths. And you may want to copy that down just so you kind of remember which is which place value. So if I wanted to convert these decimals into whole numbers, I have to figure out how would I do that? Well, what I have to do is I have to move my decimal 2 spots. Okay, and go back to your notes from the last slide. That's really saying I'm moving it 100. So I can multiply this by 100 to move my decimal 2 spots, which gives me 22. Looking at the next example, I only have to move my decimal 1 spot, and the number behind the decimal is in my tenths. So I'm going to multiply this by 10 to get 5. Now if you look at the next example, my last digit is in the hundredth spot. So I'm going to multiply all this by 100 and end up with 25x. And the reason I can move it 100 is because that's where my last digit is, and I'm moving it 2 spots, and that goes back to my place value from the last slide. Fractions are a little bit more of a review for us. For the first one, I need to get rid of my denominator of 3, so I can multiply it by 3, which gives me 3 over 3x, which gives me my 1x. For the second one, I'm going to have to multiply everything by 5. Now remember, this is saying like 5 over 1, and that goes back to our rules of multiplying fractions. I would do 5 times 2, which is 10, over 1 times 5, which is 5. So 10 divided by 5 gives me my 2, so my answer then is 2x. The bottom one, now remember, this is the same thing as saying I have a 1 right there. So I'm going to multiply everything by my denominator of 4. And you can put the over 1 if you need to. So 4 times x, or 4 times 1x, is just 4x. And then 1 times 4 is 4. And 4 divided by 4 is 1. So I'm left with 1x, or you could just put x. Either way is completely fine. Tomorrow, what you're going to actually end up doing is solving for a variable when you're given fractions or you're given decimals, and using different strategies to solve for it, in which you're getting rid of all the decimals or rid of all the fractions before you solve.